It is Wednesday, September 18th, and we have broken ground on our septic system. Boo, 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 boo. Very exciting. He's walking in the trench now. So what's being done today is digging the trench from the house and then digging out where the septic tank will go, which I believe is more or less where he's standing now, actually. I think tomorrow the plan is to dig out the sand trap. So isn't this exciting? So that's Jeff from Jeff's On-Site Services, who's managing the digger today. I think his son was the one who did it the last time they were here. Jeff is the same one who did our driveway, for those of you who may not have seen the driveway video. So it's exciting to see the digger back out on location. And we're getting a septic system, which is exciting, A, because it's one of the big systems we need to move into the house, and also because it was delayed because of weather. One of the other projects that Jeff was working on ran behind schedule because we had a lot of rain a couple weeks back. So it feels good to be moving this forward and getting it done, and also so that it's one less thing, you know, that is still open, and one less person to schedule. Peter's going a little bit crazy trying to keep all of our contractors organized. So as these jobs complete and we have one less contractor to schedule, things just become a lot easier to schedule, which is also a really nice feeling. So here's the trench so far. That's where it's coming out of the house. And then it comes this way. And then it comes this way. And then it goes to the tank, which will be right there. I don't know if you guys can see, there's quite a lot of bits of shale in our soil, which is not unexpected. In fact, it's quite expected given the nature of the soil we have here. So we were told the soil was very clayey, but you can see on this chunk here that, yeah, that's definitely clay. We haven't had rain in a week or so, and I'm trying to push on it, and it pretty much isn't going anywhere. So here is our first mystery of the day. These are the two blocks that were buried in the ground, and we had assumed that this is where they had put the propane tank on, you know, as supports, but why it has their name on it, Ferguson, I don't know. And I'm curious if that is a vanity thing, or if maybe one of the Ferguson family was in the concrete trade and branded it. I haven't looked at the other one because it's quite heavy to see if the Ferguson name is on both of them. So it's kind of cool. The Fergusons are the people who owned the property from 1945 until we bought it, but I'm very curious to know why their name is on here. So if any of you are familiar with propane tank blocks, or maybe why that name would be on there, please do let us know. Here's a bird's eye view from the property. Stopping again to measure, because the whole pit actually isn't going to be level. This is a gravity fed system, so I believe the intention is to have the septic tank sit ever so slightly at a downward angle so that stuff flows out to the out pipes at the end, which then goes into the sand trap. So it's pretty cool to see how much they're stopping to measure and level. Not knowing anything about this process, I assume they just dig a giant hole first and do it later, but this is actually much more how I would approach it, I think. You know, dig a little, make sure you've got the starting point right, and then keep going. So it's pretty cool to watch. Part of me wants to stay out here and keep watching this, but I'm going to take a break and go inside because things have happened inside since we were last here, and then we'll come back out and check on the progress. Well, this is the first big progress. They've taken out the wall. I thought some of the timbers outside on the front lawn were the support beams for this wall. It looks a little funny just with the door frame left. Yeah, that's gonna look a lot better You have a view all the way in. Let me close the door here. Yeah, so you're gonna have a view all the way in, which is great. You can see all the lath and plaster here on the floor. So that's what the plaster and lath looked like that was on the wall. Honestly, sometimes I think the demo part is the least time-consuming part. It's all the cleanup that comes afterwards. And then they've also started here on the bathroom. And in fact, one of the things that they told us, and you can see now, so this is where the, I'm missing the word for it, the bottom of the shower was installed, and they mortared it in place, which is not what you're supposed to do. That's what all of this stuff is. And unfortunately, the weight of the mortar has caused some of the foundation support under here to buckle and buck. And so in addition to getting this off, because we're moving the shower surround to the back of the bathroom, this has to come off because A, this is not kosher, and B, it's adding weight where there shouldn't be any weight. And because this was here, James is going to put a couple of extra support beams in the basement to hold up this part of the floor, because that much weight where there shouldn't have been any, and it wasn't designed to support any, has caused some temporary issues. I don't know who thought mortaring that in was a good idea, but here we are. And then the other thing they've been working on is the kitchen, because the kitchen appliances that we ordered on the pre-Labor Day sale are ready to pick up this week. In fact, need to be picked up this week. So here is a site that we may never see again. This is the roof completely exposed, and that is the underside of our brand new roofing. So this is what the kitchen extension looks like. And what I'm curious to see, this is all the insulation. Again, the same blown-in insulation that was in the rest of the house. There's quite a lot of it outside, but as you can see here, there's still some left up there. And interestingly, so there's a hole there, and there is a chimney above it. I had no idea there was actually a chimney up there. I wonder if this extension, we had assumed because of the remodeling that this extension was fairly new, but that chimney, I'm curious how old this was to have a chimney put in here, because one of the things we've been wondering is where the original kitchen was in the house. I had no idea there was another chimney there. Maybe I should have, but it looks like it stops before it hits the roof peak. I'm so curious. I wonder if there's any way they can date. Let's see if I can get a zoom in here. There we go. I wonder if there's any way they can date when they think that was put in. I don't know what it is about today, if it's the fact that it's fairly quiet here, or it's a gray, pleasant fall-ish day, or if it's all the wood in here, but I just keep looking up, and this is the happiest I have ever been in this kitchen, which sounds weird because in theory one shouldn't be happy in a kitchen in this state of disrepair, but actually just looking up and seeing all of the old wood and seeing the rough cut beams, even the chimney that's up there, I don't know what it is, you guys. This feels, I guess it just feels old to me. Maybe that's what it is. It feels raw and open and old, and I can imagine, this being, obviously it's a kitchen now, but I can imagine looking up and thinking that I'm in a barn and I'm looking up at a barn loft or something like that, and I just love it. I love standing here and looking up, and I have all of these questions now about how old this extension is, because this is, just like in the basement, this is rough cut wood, and I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, they said that kind of rough cut wood stopped being used in construction several decades ago. We have been assuming this was a fairly new extension, but especially with that brick chimney up there, I have so many questions about this. So Peter is on the phone with the county to figure out how far their right-of-way extends from the road, But one of the things we have been meaning to do and haven't was measure. We have now measured from the edge of the porch to the edge of the road is 29 feet. And then from the edge of the road to the middle of the road is 16 feet. So from the middle of the road to our porch is 29 plus 16, which is 45 feet. So we are just about 30 feet. The windows actually are 30 feet from the road. The edge of the porch is 29 feet from the road. What the gal on the phone told Peter is that their right-of-way extends pretty much to where the tree was that we cut down here. And unfortunately, because they've done such a good job of digging the stump out, we don't have an exact place where the stump was. But that puts their right-of-way pretty much within 5 feet of our house. And what Peter is trying to ask them now is there are things such as the old well that are now then technically in their right-of-way. Obviously the mailbox is in the right-of-way, which I assume is true for everyone, but then this lamppost as well is in their right-of-way. So for those of you, including my father, who suggested that we talk to the county and get some information on the right-of-way, thank you for pushing us to do that. It's something we had meant to do and had pushed to the bottom of the list. The reason we're doing this now is that Jeff is here working on the septic, as you saw earlier, and after the septic is done, the intention is to have him come up and do the French drains. So we do have a couple of days to sort out what that might look like. Let's check in and get an update on the guys. They have been continuing to dig out the septic tank hole here while we've been inside filming, and Peter's been on the phone with the county about the right-of-way. The hole is getting much bigger, and our pile of dirt is getting much bigger. So it turns out, by the way, that Peter was unaware that we had a chimney up here too. I'd wondered if they had said something and maybe he had forgotten to tell me, but no. When I asked him if he knew we had a chimney up here, he said no. And then I said, would you like to come look at the chimney? And he said yes. So we've just spent the last few minutes talking about the chimney. This is a very old, not a very old, let me back up. This is not at all the new addition that we had thought it was, or I had thought it was, and this proves it. So I don't know how old this chimney is. Peter doesn't either. That hasn't changed, but they obviously had a chimney here, and these boards are the old rough cut boards. The reason it looks new is because they had to redo it when the foundation fell apart. But honestly, I mean, this could be, I have to ask James again when they stopped using this rough cut lumber, because he told me a few weeks back and I forgot, but I think he said it was something crazy like they stopped using this kind of rough finished timber. I want to say it was like the early 1900s. So this extension, which we had assumed that the Fergusons put on in like the 50s, 60s, 70s, definitely not with a chimney that old. The other thing that we've been trying to figure out, and is if you guys remember, there is a cinder block chimney on the back of the house, which is, I'm not sure if I can give you a good shot. As far as we can tell, this bag down here is right on the edge, and so the cinder block chimney is basically here. And unlike every other chimney in the house, which has a hole cut in the ceiling, there's no hole cut in the ceiling here. So Peter and I have been trying to figure out what that cinder block chimney is. And I think this is the handy thing about having the door to nowhere. I can just kind of hang out and show you guys. The door to the basement is right below there. That's the cinder block chimney. And so Peter did some quick Googling, and the gravity-fed heating system that is now defunct in the house does require a chimney, and so we're thinking maybe that chimney, the reason there's no hole for it in the roof is that it was never meant to connect to an interior stove. It was only ever meant to ventilate one of the heating systems that is now defunct. So what a lot of questions that chimney has raised since we discovered its existence. So this is how they're progressing on our septic hole. There's probably a sexier word for it than that, but that's what it looks like to me. I'll take you guys outside here in a minute and we'll take a look down in the hole and see what's going on. The other thing I wanted to show you, and this is happenstance, this is how they insulated the entire attic. So the entire attic had a layer of blown-in insulation at one point, and then they laid down this layer of thick cardboard and they blew in a lot more insulation. That's actually a lot more insulation than you would originally have needed for a house. And best practice would have been to remove the old insulation instead of building another layer on top, but they didn't. So this shows really, really well. This is how the entire attic was done. It had this older layer on the bottom, and then they packed it down, laid down cardboard, and put the newer blown-in cellulose over the top. So the only other thing that we're thinking about this room, there's no way to access this part of the attic from the main attic because there's this wall here. And so this room, this extension, is definitely going to be the thing we need to save up for. Again, the foundation needs to be fixed. I would really like to open this ceiling and put some insulation up there, some skylights up there, and have this be a big open space. I'm so sad we have to close this in. I don't know what it is. I could just stand here staring at this all day and imagining the possibilities, especially with the chimney in the corner. So this is our hole. Jeff and his team have gone to lunch, so I'm out filming some of this for you all. I asked if there was a fancier name for this. Hole seems awfully generic. It's not a pit because it feels too big and honestly not quite deep enough to be a pit, although it's quite deep. It looks deceptive, but where that pipe comes out, that's 4 feet. So the pit on this end is about 6 feet tall, and it's, I think, a little bit less on that end. But no, as far as they know, there is no word for this other than hole. So that's where we're at now for lunch, and then when they come back this afternoon, they're going to dig out the sand pit, I think, or start digging out the sand pit over there. So this is it. This is the hole. I wish I would be able to be out here tomorrow for you guys because they're bringing the tank out tomorrow, and it comes on a truck that has a crane. It's a crane truck, and they're gonna have to back it in and use the crane to lift and put the tank in place. But unfortunately, both Peter and I have a number of work commitments tomorrow, and we're not going to be able to film that for you, so you'll have to picture that process for yourself. Okay, so James, who was away this morning, has filled us in on more of the kitchen history. He believes, and I think he is right, this room was originally an outdoor porch. So you'd come around on the front porch and you'd come in here, and this was an outdoor porch, and they had an outdoor fireplace with this lovely brick chimney. And at some point they decided to close in the porch and make it a kitchen. These rough cut boards stopped being used in the 60s. So this is definitely at least that old. It might be older, we don't actually know, but these boards stopped being used in the early 60s. So this extension is at least 80 years old. And at some point they stopped using the brick like oven or fireplace, and they did replace it with a metal one. And my suspicion was correct. When they replaced it with a metal one, they had to put the metal pipe up here, and then they just piped it into, see if you can see it here, they just piped it into the existing chimney. Now the other thing is that we know they stopped using the chimney at least when they last re-roofed the building, because there was no chimney sticking up from the roofing that they took down, and we're pretty certain that roofing was somewhere between 40 and 50 years old. So 40 to 50 years ago, when they re-roofed the kitchen, they took the chimney below the roof line, pretty much exactly as we did with the main chimney in the main part of the house. And so it's been at least since the re-roofing was done that they have used this chimney. It's also, James said, not really being supported on much of anything. It's just built on this 2x4 or beam, I guess we'll call it. It's just built on this beam and has this little bit here. So he's going to have his team take that down, which makes me happy because that means there's more brick to work with in the yard. So we're standing in what used to be an enclosed porch, and he thinks that the door to nowhere had a set of steps down to the backyard, and you would come up here onto the outdoor porch, and then at some point it became a kitchen. So Mysteries revealed.